Hey guys, and welcome to LBB 91 Coaching. We're here talking to you guys today about, have you ever been in a situation where your partner is suddenly on you, wants you, desires you, just can't let go of you, and then all of a sudden just pulls away? Well, if you have, then this is the video for you, because we're going to talk about the fearful, avoidant, hot and cold behaviors. Yes, that's precisely what you experience, the hot and cold behaviors, where someone wants this closeness, they desire being intimate with you, want to almost live in your skin, right? But then all of a sudden pulls back from the danger of feeling close to you. And it's confusing because you're wondering what happened. Why did it go this way? Why is it all of a sudden you're pulling back when you chased me, you wanted me, you craved the attention, the love, the intimacy, you wanted all of these things, and then all of a sudden you're pulling away? Well, let me tell you a little bit more about this. Before I do, like, share, subscribe, click on that wonderful click on that wonderful, hey, bro, click on that wonderful bell button, bro. It'd be like that, the English just be, you know what I'm saying? Click on that wonderful bell button for notifications of the uploads for your favorite conversations around attachment styles. So, talking about the fearful, avoidant, hot and cold behaviors. The fearful, avoidant is an attachment style that is the way that we bond in relationships, and they're born out of homes where there's lack of emotional, physical, mental, sexual safety for that child, and that child learns chaos. It learns that love is also equally harmful, and therefore there is always conflicting thoughts and behaviors that the fearful avoidant does because they're afraid of being abandoned, betrayed, or rejected, and then they feel like they're not good enough, and that also plays a massive role. And so the fearful avoidant craves loves. They want the attention. They want to be close to people. But when they get there, they start fearing they're going to lose autonomy. They fear they're going to be rejected. They're going to be hurt. They're going to be abandoned. Because really and truly, you can only be rejected when you care. You can only be abandoned when you actually care. You can only really be hurt when you actually care. When you don't care. Exactly as that. Do you know what I mean? Right? And this is what creates the hot and cold behavior. It is the wanting of the closeness at the same time fearing it. So they're not always playing a mind game, but it does become manipulative to a lot of people who are on the other end, because inevitably, once you put hot and cold behaviors on somebody and they start chasing you and then you start pulling away again, it does create a level of manipulation because it forces the other person now to yield to your power dynamic that you've created within the relationship. In fact, that is probably why a lot of people complain about avoidance in general and how they find them to almost be narcissistic in the way they do things. I get it. I hear it. I'm not here to argue that point. I don't think they are narcissists, but I understand your pain. Okay. So the fearful avoidant is really trying to understand. The fearful avoidant is really just trying to create a sense of normalcy within the hot and cold behaviors, because that's what it's experienced as a child growing up. And so it can feel like emotional whiplash to the other person, like they're being rocked back and forth constantly, because one day they're affectionate, they're texting you, they're calling you. The next minute, they're not texting you at all. It's dead silent. And it's that silence, that uncertainty that triggers most people, right? Because now we're trying to figure out what is actually going on. What happened? Why are we doing this? And it's that curiosity that creates the painfulness within the other person, because the curiosity leads them to want to find out. And the truth is, you're probably not going to get a great answer unless the fearful avoidant has done some great work and can begin to explain some of their behaviors. So one week they all seem all in, and the next they're not sure. They feel like they've gone too fast, too quick. They've said too many things, and all of a sudden, they've got to pull back. So the hot and cold behavior has a reason behind it, right? But the impact is still painful for the other person who's experiencing. And so we're only explaining the pattern, but I want you to understand that you don't have to succumb to this. I'm saying that because I understand the pain that the other person is feeling who's encountering the hot and cold behavior. I get it. It's annoying. It's painful. And it sucks, because you want to get close, you love them, you care about them, and you're seemingly having a really good time, and then you don't know where it comes from, and they pull the rug from underneath your feet. So let's talk a little bit about the different attachment styles and how they relate to this hot and cold behavior. The anxious person who sees hot and cold behavior becomes addicted, because the anxious person sees a chase. They see the necessity to prove themselves worthy. Yes, because a chase tells us that if they're the ones if I'm chasing them, they must be the more valuable. This feeds into the mind of the anxious person, who already has existed in the inconsistencies within their own upbringing themselves. So when they're hot, the anxious person feels loved, cared for, feels chosen. But when they're cold, the anxious person senses the abandonment and starts beginning to chase. The anxious person begins to overthink and then begins to overfunction by trying to do things to make the fearful avoidant feel comfortable, to know that they're the one. So the anxious person is going to internalize this. Did I do something wrong? Was it me? Are we okay? Do they still want me? Okay, if they're not going to answer, I'm going to have to chase it to find out. Then there is the dismissive avoidant people. The dismissive avoidance, in this instant, when they feel the hot and cold behavior, it's just exhausting. It's annoying, it's confusing, and it's unsafe. And eventually, it's going to cause an issue later on down the line, which a dismissive avoidant person is just going to pull away and withdraw and not say anything. The dismissive avoidant struggles already with being emotionally vibrant and having the capacity to receive emotional energy or emotional connection in a very intense way. So when the fearful avoidant does the hot and cold, it feels very intense. And this creates the instability that the dismissive avoidant wants to avoid in general. Either you're here or you're not. And if you're not, then I've got to get rid of you because I cannot rely on you and trust that if I rely on you, you will still be here. So this creates the dismissive avoidant shutdown where they're like, I'm going to withdraw from you completely because I cannot trust you. And so the dismissive avoidant person just can't relax. They can't. And they feel like, okay, is that what we're doing? Okay, because you're emotionally unpredictable, you're emotionally volatile. And the funny thing is, when I talk to a lot of people who are fearful avoidance doing hot and cold behaviors, they end up dating dismissive avoidance. And they really do believe that dismissive avoidance are the only issue. And they don't recognize that their instability and emotional inconsistencies play a massive role in the dismissive avoidant wanting to run away and withdraw. Wow. So the dismissive avoidant then looks to oftentimes pull away, and stay in its corner. It doesn't want to have to engage with the fearful avoidant in a very intense way. This doesn't benefit them. This doesn't yield the results that it wants. And so therefore, when you start to do that, the dismissive avoidant then goes, okay, cool. It's noted. And I will just keep myself to myself. But then we say this, and a secure person has a different way of operating. That doesn't mean the secure person is perfect or they don't actually be affected by the hot and cold behaviors. That would be a lie. The secure person is affected. And it also feels confusing. It feels like, a little bit annoying, frustrating, but they're not going to necessarily do the chase that the anxious person is going to do. And they're not necessarily going to literally just go away and withdraw like the dismissive avoidant person is going to do. No, their first instinct is to try and investigate and find out what's going on. They want to be patient. They want to ask more questions and make judgments. They're going to look for consistency in communication and try to repair the relationship, but they don't want to just run away or run to. The secure person doesn't necessarily tolerate just anything. Oh, you can do whatever you want in the name of me being tolerant. No, the secure person will reinstate boundaries and the expectations of the relationship. Problem of that is the fearful avoidant might not take too kindly to that. Even though it may feel safe, it also feels unsafe. So unless the fearful avoidant is ready to do that work and ready to actually commit to being safe emotionally, even a secure person can trigger a fearful avoidance. Why? Because a secure person now comes off as being almost perfect. Yeah, you're setting the bar really high here. The secure person isn't being emotionally unavailable. They're not running away. They're not running to and saying, I have to prove my worth, but they're going to ask questions that are going to make you feel seen. And that's what the fearful avoidant doesn't necessarily want, but does want. I want to be understood, but when I'm understood, I'm exposed. When I'm exposed, I'm scared. So the secure person is going to try to understand and not do that whilst losing themselves. And I think that's what's really important. The secure person recognizes there is room for growth, room for expansion, room for us to learn new things. So let's look back to this confusion aspect. What is the fear that's being activated in everybody else that makes the other attachments pull away? And what is the fear that's acting in the fearful avoidant that's making them want to do hot and cold? Well, I think as we said before, the anxious person, the fear is the fear of abandonment. And for the dismissive avoidant, it is a fear of rejection. And for the secure person, well, they have different hang up. They usually don't hang up on those particular things, but they do recognize that they don't like the inconsistency and they will call it out. But a fearful avoidant has their own fears. And because of this, they then fall and falter into pulling away. Okay, let's have a look at this particular aspect. Let's press in a little bit more deeper because we need to understand, I guess, what's actually triggering this coldness, as I said before, some of the behaviors that you may do that may trigger them. Serious conversation, oof, conflict, being asked for clarity, feeling emotionally needed, criticized, controlled, feeling too seen, feeling like they could lose themselves, realizing that they actually care. All of these can trigger a fearful avoidant. And you're probably asking, well, if, a serious conversation will trigger them? Yes. So what's the point of even being in a relationship with them? Well, the reality of the situation is there is always a way to handle those things, right? This is why this is why you yourself need to be regulated and secure so that you can call someone out in the correct manner and in the right way. What we don't want to do is scream and shout. What we don't want to do is lose our rag and cuss them out. What we do want to do is gently call them out and say, hey, look, here is what I'm needing from you. I recognize that you may need space, you may need time, and I recognize that you're trying to find that. I want you to let you know that when you do this action where you take time out without consulting me, it does make me feel uneasy, uncertain, and does make me feel emotionally unsafe. I do want us to work on this together in the future. I would hope that if you are going to take space, you let me know, then we can agree on a time period that you need space away and then you come back in, right? These are things that we have to hold someone to the fire and not just let them get away with it and go on. Okay, all right? Because if you start chasing, you're going to push them further away. If you start becoming less available and pulling back, they are going to chase, but they're only going to chase for a short while. And once they capture you, they're going to go right back to where they were again because they feel like, hold on a minute, it's getting in too tense again. If you don't know how to set a boundary, you're going to have issues because you're going to have a very chaotic existence with this fearful avoidant, right? Fearful avoidance are also very sensitive to emotional distance. They're also sensitive to emotional intensity. They're sensitive to you potentially changing your patterns. So any sign of you changing, which can indicate abandonment, will cause them to run towards rather than running away, right? And this is going to create the confusion in your mind because you're just like, why are they doing this now? Why are they behaving like this here? Right? So here's a practical tool, as I said before. Okay, all right, a practical tool to handle this. We have to be secure in the way that we deal with this. A secure response to this manner is, rather than calling them out of their name, as I said before, is to notice what the actual behavior is, then the emotion of how you felt, then explain that emotion, and then talk about what you want to see change. Right. So the beginning, I always start off with a C sandwich method. We always say, hey, look, I appreciate you having a conversation with me. I love the fact you've taken the time to have this conversation with me. I want to let you know that last week when you took time out and you didn't consult me, didn't message me, and you're away for 2-3 days, for me, I felt uncertain. I felt unclear. I felt disheveled. I felt, scared even, and anxious because I wasn't sure what happened to you. And, I wasn't sure what if you're physically safe or not, or something, something happened. So I felt that way. And I don't like feeling like that. Right. So when I start feeling like that, I start to, let's say, if I'm dismissive avoidant, which I am more, I start to pull back. I start to think, well, maybe the person's rejecting me. Right? Well, that might not be the case. I think in future, what I want to see is that you're going to communicate with me, let me know what it is that you need from me. And then we can agree and negotiate on a time that you're going to spend away, right? This is how we handle someone and call them out gently. And if it needs be, we may have to escalate if they do this once or twice and it's a repeated behavior, right? So we're not trying to immediately attack someone. Right, we're understanding of what happened, but we recognize that we need to have our own needs met, but we're not going to rush it by trying to call them to the deck and lambast them and beat them. That's not going to help you do. First and foremost, regulate your feelings, go solo, regulate, think about what you're feeling and write them down, know exactly what you're feeling, and then take the cautious time to then be able to relay that onto the fearful avoidant person, right? Make it clear, make it concise. We're not trying to beat them up, rob them. We're trying to get them to understand that this behavior is actually painful to you. Okay. So look, my time is up. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that wonderful bell button for notification of uploads. We appreciate you. Still